Hello everybody and welcome to today's spoiler warning, where we'll be discussing the latest on Vince McMahon and a little bit on Roman Reigns and Brock Lesnar for SummerSlam. There is plenty of SummerSlam news incoming. There's going to be a video on Wednesday as well, but a lot of that news will be coming out here ahead of time, and then on Wednesday it's basically the catch-up in a video for people who don't really like live stuff. So there's a lot going on with Vince McMahon, as I'm sure many of you know, most of which we will be discussing here. And firstly, I do have to question a report that was made by one Dave Meltzer, whose the report was that that should be everything now. The Wall Street Journal had uncovered basically everything. The $12 million was all that we were likely to hear. The Wall Street Journal have already uncovered several more payments that have been made, and we can expect to be hearing more about those in the next few weeks while they vet and double vet their information. The Wall Street Journal, as we know, are really giving wrestling journalism a bad name by being very, very good at what they do. Vince McMahon, for his part, is believed to be boisterous, believed to be in a very good mood and defiant in the face of criticism. Meanwhile, from what I can tell and what I can gather, Fox has been supportive on the SmackDown side. USA, not so much. To this point, there have been no sponsors that have pulled out. However, there is a lot of consumer confidence that has been lost on the basis of this Wall Street Journal report, particularly the most recent one and the details that came out surrounding it. Vince McMahon, however, is looking at this as business as usual. There is no intention from Vince to be anything other than defiant. He is continuing to be the head of creative, and there is no plan for that to change anytime soon. One of the main reasons we are seeing an internal investigation instead of an external investigation is that if there is a guilty verdict, they can walk away from it absolutely fine at the end of it. There is more news to come on Vince McMahon, as well as a bit of a preview for Roman Reigns and Brock Lesnar and what they're going to be doing over the next few weeks. But firstly, hi everyone, my name is Tom Colohue. I'm the host of Spoiler Warning here on the Tom Colohue channels. Today we will be talking about SummerSlam, we'll be talking about Vince McMahon and the WWE in general. So be sure to hit like on YouTube, follow if you haven't on Twitch, and subscribe if you haven't on YouTube as we go through it. I will be reading your questions, so be sure to get them in, and I'll be catching up with the chat as best I can over the course of the show as well. So let's see who's saying what. Simon is our first person in, saying, "Hey Tom, hope you really enjoyed your birthday weekend, have fun celebrating it." I did, thank you. Also asked about Sasha, nothing new at that point. Brian Dalton says, "Is Edge returning tonight?" I can't guarantee tonight, but Edge is currently planned to be returning shortly. I would expect him to be involved at SummerSlam in some capacity. Connor says hello on Twitch and also says hello on YouTube. Thank you very kindly for doubling up there, Connor. David Leary says hello, and Sean says hello, Tom, as well. Jaden is saying, "Hey, Tomb. Do you have any Sasha news?" No more Sasha news at this point in time. I've been ahead of the curve already, and a lot of people are currently catching up to the news that I've already shared. So at this point, that's all I can really say about it. Nothing new at this point in time. Steve, welcome mate, says, "Mr. Colohue, how are you doing, buddy? What are the chances of getting Nakamura versus Gunter for the IC title at SummerSlam?" More than 90. That is the plan at current, to have Nakamura versus Gunter at SummerSlam. Pardon me. Nakamura, as you might expect, will be losing, but the WWE were insistent on getting Gunter to defend the Intercontinental Championship at SummerSlam on pay-per-view. The reason Nakamura had the match that he did, and naturally the reason that he defeated Ludwig Kaiser, I had to get the pronunciation right, was to make his path to Gunter pretty clear. We are going to see the match. Nakamura is not standing much of a chance. Johnny Mendez says, "Hey Tom, how you doing, mate?" Doing very well, thank you, Johnny. Welcome to the show. Sean says, "Wall Street Journal said they aren't done with news on Vince." Indeed. There is plenty more coming. So Dave Meltzer saying that there isn't anything else. Nah, not quite true. Not quite. Michael says, "Hi Tom." Hello Michael, how are you doing? And Matthew Arm says, "Hey Tom, how are you doing? Any news on SummerSlam matches?" Well, we've already spoken about one SummerSlam match. We spoke plenty more previously about what the details were for SummerSlam. There's been some clarification. It is looking more like we are going to get Bianca versus Becky at SummerSlam in a rematch from last year's SummerSlam, and of course a rematch from WrestleMania, the third and the final. That seems more likely now than it did before, I'll tell you that. But that does take Asuka effectively off the card and takes off any match for the women that doesn't feature a championship. Dimitar says, hey Tom, hopefully you're doing well. I am, thank you Dimitar, hopefully you too. COVID finally got me, but watching your streams always brings me joy. Thank you Dimitar for saying that, and I hope you're okay. I've suffered with COVID myself in the past, in a number of different occasions, mostly before I started the streams. I started the streams about 9 months into our lockdown over here in the UK. I know it sucks. I know it's rough. I hope you're okay, man. Simon says, what's your thoughts on the Natalya Liv walkout no sell of Liv's Oblivion finisher controversy from the triple threat match from the SmackDown house show with Ronda last night? I don't think there's that much controversy. I really don't. I think Natalya was pissed off about something and she walked away. I think as it's on a live show, maybe they got backstage, Natalya said, sorry I was wound up, and Liv said, that's okay, I'm sorry too. Maybe that's all that happened. But now, after she already responded to this on Twitter and the WWE were unhappy with her response, she's being scripted by a PR person. Austin says, we've got to hurry up soon though because SummerSlam is coming. SummerSlam is indeed coming. It is just around the corner. We're about 3 weeks away at this point. Well, less than 3 weeks away. Coming faster than I expected, especially with the Money in the Bank Fallout still not quite finished up. Also, welcome, Austin. Andrew Quinn says, hello, Tom. Hope you had a nice weekend. I did, thank you. Also, great birthday the other day. I did, thank you very much. Tomorrow, our first preseason game against Man United, and I'm seeing the new 4 tomorrow, my old high school mate. As in I'm Tom or your old high school mate Tom. Good times. Very good times. I did not realise that we had our first pre-season game so soon, and you've just given me a reason to tune in. Plus it's Man United, so that should be a jaunt. The user says, hi mate. Hello the user, how are you? Sean says, any EO news? There is no EO news whatsoever. She's still not cleared to compete, and it sounds like she's not going to be competing anyway. I don't expect to see her on WWE TV again. Austin says, who do you think the special guest ref is? I think the most likely scenario is Sami Zayn. Sami Zayn then having the opportunity to essentially cheat on the Street Profits' behalf. Well, sorry, on the Usos' behalf, and basically taking it. We'll see how it plays out, but I think there's going to be a match between Angelo Dawkins and Jimmy Uso to determine who gets to decide the special guest referee, or it's going to end up being Vince McMahon, because let's face it, of course it is. Steve says, in your opinion, which year do you feel is the best, greatest SummerSlam pay-per-view of all time and why? Well, Steve, you're asking me about SummerSlam, and I've got to always go back to that same SummerSlam from many years ago when I first started watching SummerSlam 1998. I know there's been some tremendous years since. I know there's been some tremendous matches since. I know that Brock Lesnar bust Randy Orton open, and that certainly got some attention. I know that, well, Brock Lesnar's become Mr. SummerSlam, but I know there was also Hulk Hogan versus Shawn Michaels. God knows everyone remembers that, but for me, it's always my first. It was my very first pay-per-view right after I started watching SummerSlam 1998. It opened with Val Venus and D'Lo Brown. We had the Oddities versus Kai and Tai. We had Mankind, ostensibly and Kane versus the New Age Outlaws. That lasted about 2 minutes. Looking at the card, it's not great, but you also had Ken Shamrock versus Owen Hart in the Octagon match. Lion's Den, I believe they phrased it as. You had The Undertaker versus Stone Cold Steve Austin. But for me, the one that always stands out to me is The Rock versus Triple H. For me, SummerSlam 1998 is the greatest SummerSlam of all time. Hope that's what you're looking for, mate. Justin says, spoiler warning. Obviously, that hasn't happened yet. But according to Fightful, someone will steal Lily tonight. I really hope this doesn't lead to Alexa going back to her Fiend-type gimmick. The WWE don't necessarily want the Fiend-type gimmick. It's not really something that's working for them. Alexa Bliss really wants it. She wants to keep it. And Bray Wyatt wants it kept as well because, you know, of course he does. But there's not many people really who could be stealing Lily at this point. Now, Alexa Bliss does need direction, and the plan is to get her as involved as possible going forwards, but it's not going to be Bianca Belair, is it? The most likely scenario, unfortunately, right now, is Rhea Ripley. Rhea Ripley. And then we end up with some sort of combination of Alexa Bliss and Edge, which I'm not hating. The user says, did you see that Cody was advertised for the 29th of August Raw? Yes, they need to update their listings. KJ says, what's up, Tom? How you doing, mate? Great to see you. Simon says, Ariel Hawani meets Sasha Banks interviews on BT Sport after Raw tonight over here in the UK. Very interestingly, I don't believe that's a new interview, but if it is, certainly something to look forward to. Noob says, hello, Tom. How you doing? Doing very well, Noob. Great to see you. Mr. Floodwater says, heard anything about Natalya throwing a tantrum at a live event? No, but I am aware that she got up quickly from a finisher and walked away. That's the only thing anyone actually knows, but suddenly she's been accused of throwing a tantrum. KJ says, maybe Boogs returns to do Nakamura entrance. I do believe he should be fit and ready to at least make the entrance at SummerSlam. Now, he certainly wouldn't be fit and ready to return to wrestling, but he could come out for that one intro and then disappear for another couple of months. There's nothing wrong with that, and certainly would make Nakamura feel like a bigger deal before he loses. Johnny Mendez says, so with the controversy, can you see USA and Fox renewing their contracts with WWE when they run out? Yes, absolutely, 100%, no question. I'm confident everyone involved in TV broadcasting for WWE wants to continue to do TV broadcasting for the WWE. That is not in question at this point in time. They would just request that Vince McMahon stops appearing on TV, and may have done so already. Bailey, welcome. Says Tom, is Judgment Day out of momentum as long as Rhea Ripley is in concussion protocol? They seem to have lost some drive since she departed. I don't necessarily think they lost drive since she departed. I suspect that drive was lost when Edge went. I think ultimately Edge has been pushing this particular group, making suggestions, and ultimately kind of booking it. Kind of booking the whole thing himself. So when he was no longer involved, there simply wasn't much interest in actually pushing Judgment Day. Once he returns, I'd imagine that will change. That said, Rhea Ripley at least had a match lined up, whereas Damian Priest and Finn Balor kind of didn't. Hi Megan, how you doing? Jermaine says, hi Tom, hope you're doing okay. Also, you're the most hated man in the wrestling community because every wrestling journalist hates you for some odd reason. I don't know why. Might be because of how many times they've been asked to give me credit for reports that they think they reported first. Might have something to do with that. When something goes onto a pay side, just a pay side, and you're told, oh, this is exclusive, those same people then get quite annoyed when people who come here and watch these shows regularly point out, maybe you should credit the guy who got it a month ago. Maybe that's just me. Simon says, personally, I'm hoping for Alexa versus Bianca at SummerSlam for the Raw Women's Title Championship. I think that would be a great match. However, I don't think that's likely, especially if Fightful are correct in the report that Alexa Bliss was going to be stealing... was going to have Lily stolen. That's not a Becky Lynch move. It's certainly not a Bianca Belair move. Brian Dalton says, Seth Riddle SummerSlam. I'd be down for that. I don't think there's any particular storyline for it at the moment, but I don't know who Seth's really bouncing off right now. So Seth Riddle could certainly work as a good storyline at this point in time. Connor, how you doing, mate? Says, as a United fan, I wish you the best of luck. And our friendly tomorrow kicks off at 2 p.m. Our time, just so you know. Thank you kindly, Connor. I do appreciate that. I can put it on in the background at work. I have a good job where you can do that. It's absolutely amazing. But yes, good looking out. I'll be sure to check it out, and I'll pop into the Discord if you're in there to have a chat. Sean says, I can see the guest referee being Solo Sikoa. Solo Sikoa would be even more biased than Sami Zayn, so I don't see anyone allowing that. Razar says, now that Stephanie is CEO, what is her role at the TV tapings if she's even there? She is there. She's there semi-regularly, but she's mostly there in the boardroom, making business decisions and leaving the day-to-day running of the company to the head of creative, Vince McMahon. Dimitar says, some positive news. It seems like Batty got suspended on Twitter again. Well, he will keep threatening to murder people. For example, Billy Batty has threatened me on a number of occasions. My favourite threat was... Billy Batty is one of the first people to go onto Twitter and declare me a liar. The lie that he said I told was that The Rock would be working with Becky Lynch in the first SmackDown on Fox. Funnily enough, he also said that I'd lied about that after it had already happened. So when this report, when I posted a report on this on Sportskeeda, who I worked for at the time, he was posting in their Facebook saying, you need to get rid of this guy. He's lying. I'll come back. I'll take pity on you. Yeah, they didn't want him back. Simon says it looked very much like an accidental eye gouge by Liv on a close-up Zoom photo before she hit the oblivion, a very common occurrence on the UFC MMA boxing. Seems like Natty's reaction was to check her eyes. Certainly possible. Certainly possible. I don't know. I've not looked deeply enough into it. As you say there, Simon, it looked like. We don't actually know. BFG says, I'm so excited because Charlie Austin just signed to the Australian League of. Cool. Steve says, thank you, mate. Appreciate it as always. I'm guessing that's going into one of your videos, Steve. As such, by all means, hit me up when it comes out. I want to make sure to show it some love. Simon says, my favourite SummerSlams of all time are 2002, 2005. So, you don't have a favourite SummerSlam of all time. Got it. Justin believes SummerSlam 2002 is the best ever. I believe that was the one headlined by The Rock versus Brock Lesnar, so the Rock and Brock connection. Tommy says, I hope everything is okay with Rhea's heart. I believe so. Primarily, it's a head injury, to my knowledge, but I'm not aware of there being any heart problems at this point in time. Michael says, why does WWE absolutely suck at booking women? I think the main reason is a lack of women writing. Just a lack of women actually writing storylines. If there's one thing I've learned about America, particularly recently, is that American men don't really seem to understand women. And what I mean to say there is that the people in charge of the country, the Republican Party, for example, even the president, doesn't seem to quite understand a woman. And when it comes to WWE writing, maybe just get maybe just get some women involved. You know, Becky Lynch has been kind of booking herself recently. There's an exclusive for you. Becky Lynch has been booking herself a lot recently, and the WWE creative team just been like, yeah, sounds good, we'll go with that. In the same way that Seth's been doing. And she's the only one who's really had anything good recently. Sean says, did you watch the Undertaker documentary yesterday? I did not. The Undertaker used to be a bit of a hero of mine, but I've learned a lot more about him since, and my God, I wish I hadn't. Tom Talks Rubbish said, big love. Welcome, Tom. How you doing, mate? Hopefully you're good. I've seen some of your tweets recently about maybe the channel not growing as quickly as you want it to. I would love to, for example, have a meeting with you at some point and talk about some of my experiences and see if that could help. So let me know. If anyone else is interested in some big interviews with some of the biggest names in wrestling media, Tom might well be your guy. Noob says, I'm hoping for Bliss versus Bianca at SummerSlam for the Raw Women's title, but since Becky wants to go back to the top, it's going to be difficult for Asuka to have a direction after her feud with Becky. Not necessarily. Asuka versus Rhea Ripley makes a lot of sense, for example, but we're not there yet. Now, it takes a little while further before we actually get to the heels, so let's maybe have Asuka versus Doudrop. Haven't seen Doudrop for a little while. Let's have that. I'd love to have Asuka versus Shayna Baszler, but that moment still has not come. Moxie, alright mate. Says, Tom, I'm really excited for Roman versus Brock. I'm saying that there needs to be blood, needs to be flaming tables, they need to try and murder each other in a 38-minute match, and Roman needs to win clean. I gotta be honest, one of those things will happen. Just one. Pardon me. Just one of those things is going to happen. Just one. Just one. And I think we all know what it is. We're about 20 minutes into the show. We still have a bit of a SummerSlam preview for Roman Reigns and Brock Lesnar, how they're going to be used going forwards, including hopefully a bit of a pull-apart brawl that's been pitched recently. And of course, we have been talking about Vince McMahon. There will be more on that. But I am still catching up with chat. Please do remember to hit like on the video if you're watching on YouTube. Every like helps to grow the audience. BFT says the Australian League is becoming popular with bigger names wanting to retire here in Oceania. Cool. Oceania. Cool. Simon says SummerSlam 2003, Goldberg was super over with the WWE fans as a babyface. Should have gone over and won the big gold championship belt in the Elimination Chamber. Beat everybody, but Triple H buried him. Well, I'm not sure how much you would call it buried when you're hit with a sledgehammer from the outside. You spent most of the match destroying everyone and you don't have the stamina to compete much further. And then, a month later, Triple H lost to him anyway. Burials tend not to be like a 5-minute thing. They tend to be long-term. Moxie says, I want Roman to bring his inner spirits, come over an Umaga like a tire, who is more powerful than ever. That would be fire. Would be a lot of fun, but Roman is already more powerful than ever before. And if you strike him down, he'll become more powerful than you can possibly imagine. So, eek. Simon says SummerSlam 99, 2000, 2006 are also really good as well. So what you're saying, Simon, is that you don't have a favourite SummerSlam. KJ says, you know why still a thing? Because Money in it's a big time match, and last time I checked, it wasn't confirmed yet. Do you mean Becky versus Bianca? Because that would indeed be the case. It is in fact Money, and yes, it hasn't been confirmed yet. Johnny Crow says, I heard a rumour on Twitter about Dominic possibly joining Judgment Day. Any truth to that? Well, what's your source? Firstly, Johnny, because if your source is Twitter, assume no. What I like to do is not necessarily sit here and say, this is right, this is wrong. What I like to do instead is say, here's how you know whether it's right or wrong. KJ says, Becky never got a rematch. Michael said she doesn't need one. Of course, there are no automatic rematch clauses anymore. Sean said, if someone steals Lily, it really wouldn't have to be Rhea, Nikki, Ash, or Doudrop could steal her. That's true, and I do feel like we were eventually going to have some sort of Nikki Cross versus Alexa Bliss feud again, but we've already had it, so it may be that they're just sort of resetting after the Liv Morgan tag team. The Liv Morgan tag team, to be sure, could have just been a distraction to keep people from guessing, oh, we're going to have Liv Morgan win the briefcase. Moxie is expecting Edge tonight. Simon says, your thoughts on Chelsea double signing City players Sterling and Ake for a combined 100 million? Some good deals for a club that's nowhere near City level. Bailey says, I recall last week someone suggested Paul Heyman could be the guest referee, but he's not jumping around a ring to make 2 counts. I said much the same at the time, and I do think that's fair. Johnny says, Bianca or Liv turning heel down the road would be great as it wouldn't be expected, especially Liv. Especially Liv, yes, but for the moment, at the moment, I would be milking that for all it is worth. Literally, milking it for everything it's worth. Absolutely. Keep her a face as long as you can. When the people start to turn, then go heel. Just pick your moment, you know? Douglas Bino says, greetings. Update of women's tag titles future. At the moment, there is no plan in place for the women's tag championships. The WWE creative team are aware of them, and they are not really pitching anything. They've essentially been told, no, just wait. Just wait. The WWE did plan to have a 4-team tag team tournament. However, they simply were not able to gather enough teams, which is disappointing on so many levels, and they just weren't able to work out how they wanted to do it. So, particularly while they're still negotiating with Sasha and Naomi, which, by the way, there is still an ongoing negotiation. There's about as much news as I have on that one. The negotiation is still ongoing. There is no plan for the tag team championships. Simon says, Goldberg not winning the World Heavyweight Championship. Big gold Raw belt in the Elimination Chamber at SummerSlam 2003. Triple H burying him. Instead, they went with him going over Triple H for the gold World Heavyweight Championship belt Unforgiven 2003. Yeah, it's not a burial if a month later you lose a championship. It's not the same thing. People use burial a bit too much. Steve says, do you believe Clash of the Castle will have many fresh matches on the show or a number of rematches from SummerSlam card? Bit of both. There will be fresh matches. There will be a couple of rematches, but only from feuds that are just starting. For example, if we do get Becky versus Bianca, I think that will be the end of it at SummerSlam because the WWE want a third match. So the match to end the feud, as it were, because at the moment they're 1-1. They wanted much the same with Sasha Banks. The plan was Sasha Banks versus Bianca. Sasha loses at WrestleMania. Sasha wins at SummerSlam. Instead, Becky won because Sasha was unavailable. And then we would have had another Sasha versus Bianca match later on, in which there would be a final conclusive winner. That's very much the plan. 3 matches in a year don't sound like that much to me personally, as long as they do wrap it up there. Sai, welcome mate. Says, hey Tom and all, hope we're all well. Vince's position is starting to feel like Boris Johnson. Drip, drip, drip. Also, how could Dave Meltzer have possibly known there was no more to come? Weird call. Yeah, really strange. Really strange to see Dave Meltzer reporting that, yeah, there'll be no more from the Wall Street Journal. How exactly would he have known that? Like, don't get me wrong, I respect a lot of the work that Dave Meltzer has done in the past, but he's not the Wall Street Journal. He's not a mainstream journalist. He doesn't have the access or the resources that they do. He doesn't. He absolutely does not have that. I got to be completely blunt. Wrestling companies are much more likely to speak to the Wall Street Journal than they are Dave Meltzer. Michael says, I agree, Tom. Bring in more women's writers. I mean, yeah, that's basically what I think. Connor, you let me know if I get it wrong. I'm just going to say Connor. Says it looks increasingly like Natalya will be added to Liv and Ronda's match to now allow Liv to retain while protecting Ronda. They seem to be experimenting this at house shows. Very possibly. It's not the worst plan, because I know a lot of people are saying, oh, Liv's going to lose it immediately, Liv's going to lose it immediately. I don't see that. I do not believe that to be the case. So if Natalya's going to be there to take the pin, she'll be there to take the pin. Sama says, Seth's only pay-per-view win this year, game against Roman on pay-per-view. Yes, but, so what? Seth's still a massive deal. It doesn't matter how many losses he's taken. Absolutely doesn't matter. He's still recovered. He's still hot. He's still everything they want him to be. So it doesn't matter how many losses he's got. He is living proof that if you're a good enough character, wins and losses genuinely don't matter. KJ says, we know your favourite Royal Rumble, Tom. You do. You do. Tom Talks Rubbish says, appreciate that. Busy with interviews. I'm going to guess I was meant to say this week. But let's set something up. It's just frustrating as my Twitter is growing but not channel. Yeah, YouTube and Twitter are very, very different beasts. And I do find the only way to grow on YouTube is just more and more videos on YouTube. So we can have a talk about it. We can have a look at some of my stats and examine them and so on and so forth. No worries, KJ. No worries, Michael. You don't need to be sorry. You had a conversation, got a bit testy, so you stopped. It was great. Because you put @ at the beginning of it, I knew that I didn't need to read it. That was perfect. You got the chat rate up on YouTube, which always is a good thing because it just guarantees more viewership. The point at which you were arguing is where I got my peak of 38 so far. So I ain't exactly upset. Thank you, guys. Moxie says, Tom, how long do you give Roman versus Brock and how would you book the ending? Right, let's get into this a little bit. So as regards Roman and Brock, they are going to be publicising this match as the main event over both Raw and SmackDown. We know this because Roman appeared on SmackDown and Brock is appearing on Raw. We won't be guaranteed to get any sort of in-depth physical altercation between the two until the last week or so. The last week will feature both men on both shows. There's going to be physicality. It's going to get aggressive and the Usos, as you might expect, are going to get beat up. But also, Brock actually kind of wants to work with Sami Zayn again. So we may even get a little bit of Sami Zayn. As regards the match, I think the best thing they could do here is to not make it like their previous matches by making it like Brock's usual style. Now, when it comes to Roman versus Brock, usually they merge the two. Brock has his own formula that he has for wrestling matches. Roman has his. So they merge the two. It doesn't last as long as a Roman match. It's a bit more fast-paced. But it's also not finisher spam like Brock's style. I want finisher spam. I do. We're going last man standing. Let's do it. I want someone going through a table in the first 5 minutes. Roman's probably going to spear Brock through the barricade. I want them fighting through the crowd, but I don't think Roman would be doing that. But I want it. I want it. I want it to be like a Steve Austin match. I want it to come down to the 5th spear. I want it to come down to an utter war. I want it to involve burial, literal, tables thrown on people. I want handcuffs. I want whips. I want no, sorry, that's just my weekend. I want war. I want war, and they can do that. I also want Austin Theory at ringside. And I want both Brock and Roman to attack him. I would love it if Austin Theory comes down, sits at the commentary desk, just every now and then stands up and applauds, reminds him that he has a briefcase, and while he's holding the briefcase in front of Brock, Roman spears him. At some point he's holding the briefcase in front of Roman, and Brock Germans him. And then for a moment, Roman and Brock look at each other like, yeah, screw that guy. I want that. I absolutely want that. There's a few ways this match could go that would just be a lot of fun. And it would actually make people a lot more invested in it. I think they've done well with Money in the Bank to actually at least give it something interesting to happen. But it's worth remembering, the last time Brock Lesnar and Roman Reigns fought at SummerSlam, Braun Strowman was on the outside and the match lasted about 5 minutes in total. Stranger things can happen. Tommy says, is Elias going to be on Raw tonight? Still hoping for Elias and Zeke versus the Usos at SummerSlam. Well, unfortunately, the Usos will be taking on the Street Profits at SummerSlam, but there's no reason to say that Elias and Ezekiel can't find their way into the match with some sort of number one contendership match. I'd love a gauntlet match, and I'd love them to be involved in that. I'm not sure if we'll see Elias. He might not be there tonight. I'll send out some feelers. I know Ezekiel's going to be there, but I'll find out if Elias is going to be there as well. KJ says, WWE made too many releases, to be honest. The depth is lacking in both the women's and men's division. Still mad we didn't get Roman versus Samoa Joe or Hardy. Yeah, we got some Roman versus Samoa Joe, but not enough. We also got some Brock versus Samoa Joe, but not enough. There is a bug flying around my office. Anyway, we got good Roman versus Samoa Joe at times and bad Roman versus Samoa Joe at other times. But the lack of Hardy and Roman, that seemed ready. That seemed ready to go, and it just never happened. Simon says, your thoughts on the Jordan Grace name redacted Twitter controversy. I appreciate that everyone says name redacted. I do appreciate that. Today, Jordan was a live stream with David Benoit. Well, I imagine that's Chavo. Vicky Y2J apologised for her comments, donated $5,000 to a concussion charity. I think that's the right way to do it. I absolutely think that's the right way to do it. It's not good enough to say, I'm sorry. You have to show that you're sorry. Not only that, but she gave the opportunity for people to say, I forgive you. I think she's handled that perfectly. We all make mistakes. It's what happens next that defines us. KJ says Roman versus Lee and Wyatt could have been big time matches too. We did get Roman versus Lee, and we did get Roman versus Wyatt. Both of those things did happen. Michael says that's another frustrating thing with the tag titles. Give the women more. I'm so irritated. I'm sorry. You don't need to be sorry, Michael. You can be irritated here. You can. You can be yourself. That's all that you can be. Steve says, Tom, your chat is always the most well-informed group of all wrestling chats. Can anyone please help me? Is WCW Group Free Chance theme music on WWE Network is legit or replaced dubbed? I don't know on that one, but I do know that Free Count's theme was recorded by someone outside of WCW, so the license may have expired after 20 years. It's not impossible. Not impossible. Johnny says after next year's WrestleMania, if he can get The Rock, will Roman start to be slowly phased out so we can go to Hollywood and do John Cena-like appearances? Roman is already being phased out, and any time at which he would do that would have nothing to do with The Rock. There is very little interest, to my knowledge, from Hollywood for Roman Reigns at this time, but I'm sure he'll be able to drum it up now that he's got a bit more time. Michael says, seriously, what does Meltzer know about an NDA? Hopefully nothing, because if he does, it means he's seen it. And it means he's known this for a long time and hasn't said anything. So hopefully nothing. Simon says, very interestingly, former WWE talent star Lindsay Dorado mentioned doing some in-ring training with his very good friend Sasha Naomi very soon in the near future. How is that interesting? I'm very confused by people saying this. Sasha Banks and Naomi both train with whoever the hell they want to train with. It has nothing to do with the fact that they're not with the WWE current. Even when they were with the WWE, they still trained with Lindsay Dorado. It's actually not interesting at all. It's very standard day-to-day stuff. Moxie says, Tom, I think we will get Roman versus Drew versus Sheamus at WWE Castle. I wouldn't hate it. I don't think it's going to happen, but I wouldn't hate it. Razar says, any update on Bayley? Find it crazy that they have a healthy Bayley and Charlotte and not feature them on SummerSlam with how lacking the roster feels right now in star power. There may be an intentional choice to do that, to essentially leave room for Liv Morgan to breathe and to further establish her on SmackDown before we have the return of Charlotte and potentially the return of Bayley. That said, they are waiting on the right storyline for Bayley, as I mentioned, for a month and a bit now. The moment is coming. We're just waiting for the moment to actually arrive. KJ says, Tom, any idea as to who's leaking the Vince news, or do you know how it's getting out? I know some of how it's getting out, but it would not be a good idea for me to share what I do know, and I certainly don't know as much as the Wall Street Journal. Justin says, Rhea stealing the door instead of getting a match for the Raw title match she's supposed to would be an extremely weird way to come back to TV. Potentially, yes, but it does mean that Rhea would then get a match against Alexa Bliss at SummerSlam and can then afterwards go up against Bianca Belair after Bianca Belair defeats Becky Lynch. KJ says, I think having Liv feud with Ronda and fans looking at her to lose is great because there's an actual underdog story. I do agree with that. I do think the main reason Daniel Bryan got as over as he did is because he kept losing. People wanted to back him because of how often he was losing matches, because the WWE clearly didn't believe in him. There's a reason people got behind Drew McIntyre on the indies, because you cheer someone that the WWE chooses not to push. There's a reason Dean Ambrose, despite being Dean Ambrose and not Jon Moxley, was so popular when Seth Rollins and Roman Reigns were less so. Despite being Dean Ambrose and not Jon Moxley. There's a reason. You'll get behind the underdog. You'll get behind the loser. Sometimes a losing streak genuinely is the best thing you can do. Look at Becky. She hasn't exactly suffered for this period from WrestleMania where she's been coming out on the bottom more often than not. KG also saying quite rightly, the more Rollins loses, the more he's over. Absolutely correct. Moxley says Royal Rumble 2019 was just a fantastic Royal Rumble, and you are not wrong. That entire pay-per-view is my favourite pay-per-view. It has replaced SummerSlam 98, which until then was my favourite pay-per-view. But Royal Rumble 2019 was just the best pay-per-view I think the WWE have ever put on. It opened with Becky Lynch versus Asuka, then had The Miz and Shane McMahon versus the Usos. Then it was Ronda Rousey versus Sasha Banks. We had the Women's Royal Rumble won by Becky Lynch. Then we had Brock Lesnar versus Finn Balor. We had Daniel Bryan versus AJ Styles. And we main evented with a Royal Rumble win for Seth Rollins. How good is that? Simon says, how about Alexa versus Asuka? I would not mind that at all. Wouldn't mind it in the slightest. I'd be very excited by that prospect. They have wrestled once before. I really enjoyed it. I think it's Alexa Bliss's best match she's ever had, is the one match she's had with Asuka so far. It's been a while since I've seen it though. Sean says, Karrion Kross believed that he and Scarlett would be WWE lifers. They love the environment, not the entertainment. Could this be a hint at them returning? No, they were asked a direct question as to whether they enjoyed their time in WWE. They said, yeah, we enjoyed it. We thought we'd be there for much longer. You've got to remember, it's a lot more about the question than just the answer. Michael says, does Ronda lose clean to anyone other than maybe Becky at Mania? Yeah, I'm going to say only Becky at Mania. And I suspect after that she takes another break. No, Michael, I don't believe she's going to beat Becky. I do think she'll take that loss and then move on for a little while again. The WWE will stay in touch, as they did the entire time, and you'll probably hear from myself that she's coming back when she is, because after all, a couple of days before you heard about it on Fightful, behind the paywall, you heard about it right here on these YouTube lives. Nelson says, what do you think Lashley's promo meant about challenging someone from any promotion? I think that's just Lashley's way of trying to generate some headlines and trying to get some people from other promotions to say, you're not really that good. The WWE instructed him to do so to generate some headlines, in much the same way Seth Rollins every now and then goes, I'm the best wrestler on the planet, because he gets people like Will Ospreay and Kenny Omega going on the offensive. Douglas says, I hope the fight between Brock and Roman lasts more than 10 minutes. I hope so too. I really do. Didn't last very long last time after all. Simon says, why did they always push Roman over Seth/Mox? Seth/Mox are far more better wrestlers than Roman in my opinion. Because they knew that this was how good Roman could be, they just also knew that this wasn't how good Roman was at the time. Bayley says, if the WWE board told Vince he could either remain as CEO or head of creative but not both, what do you think he would choose? He would choose head of creative because that's where he has more control, I believe. However, that scenario is never likely to happen. Jermaine says, I think Meltzer is going by the old stories about Vince McMahon back in the past. He doesn't know about new stories because these are the stories that he's getting from the old WWE writers. And I think that's something worth considering. Jermaine, you raise a very good point there. There is plenty of evidence, anecdotal and otherwise, to suggest that Meltzer's contacts are no longer really that involved. It tends to be people of the old guard. People like, for example, Paul Heyman's era. Let's just say Paul Heyman's era. And writers who were in the room at that point. Those writers are no longer in the room. He has a lot more source at AEW, but that's because AEW tell wrestlers to follow journalists so that journalists can reach out and talk to them. And that's a proven fact, by the by. Hector says, the Mega Powers 2 featuring Brock and Roman book it WWE. I wouldn't hate it. I know I've said it before, but I wouldn't hate it. If at the end of it, Paul Heyman just said, I know we keep doing this. How about we don't? How about we just take over? How about that? How about Austin Theory tries to win the championship, but it ends up being Roman with the Universal Championship, Brock with the WWE Championship, and they both just go to both shows and say, you're getting neither. Just an idea. I don't hate it. Connor. Thank you, Connor. I appreciate that. Okay, just to smash that bug Roman style. What with the... Or like a full-on Superman punch. I don't think this shirt would survive it. D. Freeman. How you doing, mate? Says, I'll be there at SummerSlam. I want to see a hard-hitting, clean, as a last man standing match can be, but no Theory on the outside. That would be too much comedy. Fair. It would distract from the overall war that I am looking for. That is a fair comment, D. Freeman. Jaden says, why can't we use Ronda's theme in WWE 2K22? Because WWE 2K22 have not paid the royalties to use it. Moxie says, I want blood. I want Roman and Brock to be bleeding. I want Paul getting F5'd. I want the ring to be destroyed. The post to be off ringside to be destroyed. And I want Roman to throw Brock through the post. If they can just basically destroy the ring and most of ringside, I think we will all be happier for it. Kervin says, what next for Bianca for SummerSlam? It's looking more likely now that instead of Rhea versus Bianca, which was the initial plan to come round to it at this point, they are looking for someone else. I think Becky Lynch is the most likely person to challenge Bianca Belair at SummerSlam. I also kind of think she's going to lose. Jermaine says, I believe Theory will have a failed cash-in if he tries to cash in on Roman or Brock after or during the Last Man Standing match. WWE might save the Money in the Bank cash-in for Clash at the Castle. Might well do, but I do think we're more likely to see it at SummerSlam. That said, I don't see Austin Theory cashing in successfully either, because if he does cash in, this isn't exactly how I'd expect Roman's era to end, basically. They do want to keep him separate from Roman when it comes to the championship, but they are having him play tease, as you might expect, because he's holding a briefcase. Hello, Toxic Predator. How the devil are you? It's been a little while. Hope you're well. Sean says maybe Bayley steals Lily. Also, Alexa wants to work Rhea. Alexa does want to work Rhea. I spoke about that just before WrestleMania, that Alexa does want to work with Rhea Ripley. Bayley's not a bad shout. That would actually be a decent reintroduction for Bayley. I'd love it if she did steal the doll and then we just got a ding-dong hello featuring Lily. Bayley there able to say, I'm trying to save you from yourself. Nobody wants that. Nobody wants a return to that. I wouldn't hate it. I've said that a lot so far, but it is true. Noob says the match between Asuka and Becky really got everyone talking about last week. Everyone had respect for Becky and Asuka because Asuka definitely deserves her flowers after her feud with Becky. She's always deserved her flowers. What I will say, a lot of people were very nervous when Asuka returned about how this feud would go. I think Asuka's had the absolute rub of the green. Yes, she hasn't necessarily been the one to win every match, but that's okay. I think she's really picked up a lot of speed with this feud. And I look forward to Asuka going to SmackDown. She's one of the early names that's been discussed for a move in the draft. Kevin says, yeah, but Kurt Hawkins lost like 100 matches but still not getting over. You say that, but when he pledged free tacos when he eventually won a match, the crowd was legitimately behind him. He found a way to get over, just not over to a decent degree. KJ says, I love how you know the whole Rumble 19 card was really a stacked show and the correct Rumble winners. I agree. Completely agree with all of that. All of that. Moxie says, Tom, what do you think is Roman's best match as the Tribal Chief? I'm saying Roman versus Kevin Owens. I think it was Roman versus Daniel Bryan on SmackDown, Daniel Bryan's last match in the company. I just thought that was an amazing match featuring a lot of top rope stuff as well. Simon, disagree. I think all three of them are tremendous generational talents. I genuinely don't know which one is better. KJ says, WWE isn't saying wrestling, so saying Mox and Seth are better wrestlers mean nothing. Also true. One reason Roman is pushed was his is because he looked like a freaking star, face of a company, and million, or in this case, $1 billion. Again, not wrong. Not wrong there. And KJ also quite rightly saying Seth was pushed first heavily, then he got hurt. He was the first one to win the championship, Seth. People forget that. Hey James, how you doing? Moxley says, best match of 2022, The Bloodline versus RK Bro and Drew McIntyre. Not there for that. Best match for me remains Becky Lynch versus Bianca Belair at WrestleMania. Though, honourable mention, Johnny Knoxville versus Sami Zayn. I said it. Johnny Knoxville versus Sami Zayn at WrestleMania was amazing. Amazing. Absolutely amazing. Please do remember, if you're watching on YouTube, hit like. That little thumbs up can make a massive difference to what we are trying to achieve here. We are still growing at this point, and we are still trying to essentially the bigger we get, the closer we get to a point where I can do pretty much anything. Can get the contacts I'm looking for, can pay for any interviews that I need to do, and so on and so forth. The closer I get to full time, we will have more information and more backstage exclusive information if we are a more successful channel. That is a fact. I've never paid for sources, but I don't look down on the idea of getting the right information. So I don't hate the idea. Simon says, your thoughts on Hangman and the Dark Order as a fan? Two of my personal AEW faves, absolutely love and enjoy their work in AEW. Dark Order never really hit the heights for me. Hangman Page did. James is looking forward to Liv Morgan versus Natalya. Well, that's coming. That's coming on SmackDown. Johnny says, I hope Roman goes to Raw in the draft, as I think he's done everything there is to do on SmackDown. I don't disagree. I would miss him from SmackDown. I think he's essentially become the de facto face of SmackDown. But if it was a change for something like Bobby Lashley and Matt Riddle, I think we could do pretty well with that. Better, Simon. That I appreciate. Moxley says, give me AJ Styles versus Montez Ford and Riddle versus Gunter. Montez Ford versus AJ Styles is a really good shout, Moxley. I'm really happy that you said that. Joey says, do you have any insight on what that NXT QR code was meant to be? I do not at this point in time. Ed may know better. So you may want to message Ed on Twitter. I'm sure he will have his theories. Ed is, after all, my NXT guy for a reason. Sean says, Ray versus Finn and Bianca versus Carmella for Raw Women's Championship is in the preview for Raw tonight. Ray versus Finn is certainly an interesting one. Connor says, Tom, have you seen what Santino Morea tweeted earlier? Yeah, I did. I think it might end up being deleted. Moxley says, who beats Roman for the title when Roman loses the WWE title? I'm kind of thinking Braun Breaker. I think that championship is going to Seth, and at this point, it's looking like Saudi. Simon says, your thoughts, who wins? Do we get Roxanne 2 belts, or Mandy remains tomorrow night on NXT? I still think it's early for Roxanne, but I do think come SummerSlam, Toxic Attraction should be coming up. DJ says, where can I sign up to be a wrestler? Pretty much any wrestling school you would like. The best thing you can do is get into a wrestling school, and then your wrestling teachers will use their contacts to get you into wrestling promotions. And from there, those wrestling promotions will use their contacts to get you over. It's really that simple. At that point, the WWE will start to notice. UR Nation, who eventually became Apollo Crews, was a former Preston City Wrestling champion around the corner from me. That's where he got scouted by WWE. Go to them indies. KJ says, also don't forget Roman can't beat Seth. My favourite thing about Roman, Seth and Mox was the rock, paper, scissors. So for those who don't know or never noticed this, for the longest time, the three men had a rock, paper, scissors effect on each other. Roman beat Mox. Mox beat Seth. Seth beat Roman. Rock, paper, scissors. It was so simple, but such clever storytelling. Literally, that's all it was. They could beat one of them, but they couldn't beat the other one. And that's how they made sure they were always kept as equals. And I loved it. Loved it. Loved it. James says SummerSlam's going to be a good show. So far, so good, to be honest. I'm not hating the main event as much as a lot of other people are. Just as a concept, I'm not hating it. Really not. Hector says, the more I think about it, WWE really made people like Braun, Killer Cross, and others like stars, and now look what they're doing. Currently, people were sold they'd be in AEW. I don't know what you mean by sold. Fans decided all of those wrestlers would go to AEW. There was never any inclination that they actually would. Simon says, JD from NY, the massive big dog. I don't know what all of that is. But says, JD from NY thinks Nick Khan is the leak guy leaking all of Vince's news to the Wall Street Journal in his personal opinion. Well done to him for having an opinion. Now he can go ahead and shut up about it, because I don't believe that to be the case. There's literally no reason that would happen. None whatsoever. Austin says, could we get a return at SummerSlam with Bayley like Becky did last year? Yes, we very much could. Pardon me? Joey says, what is AJ Styles going to do at SummerSlam? I'm not sure he'll do anything at SummerSlam, to be honest. I hope they can put something together, but at this point it looks more like he's going to end up in some sort of massive tag team with Edge. So who knows? Simon says, I really love and appreciate Tony Storm's work right now in AEW. Really think it's absolutely terrific. I'm glad you're enjoying it. Kervin says, everybody on Twitter blaming Sheamus for jokes about sore throat and getting tested for COVID-19. Always said, I don't blame the talent, blame the company. He, as much as anyone, is trying to do the simple thing of living with COVID. I don't blame him for it, really. Like saying, I've got a cough, I've got the flu. Same thing. I don't see the big deal, personally. Simon says, are we getting Miz Ciampa versus Logan/Styles at SummerSlam, Tom? Certainly a possibility. We're definitely getting Styles versus a Miz in some capacity. AJ Styles is working in and around that, so it does make sense. Connor says, yeah, I would agree the Styles regards Santino Marella. It needs to be deleted. Does not look good on him. Yeah, you're also not wrong in that. It's an absolutely fair comment. Steve says, what do you think is the best looking championship in wrestling, past or present? Absolutely no question. The NXT UK Championship. It is a work of art, and no one will ever be able to tell me different. That is a beautiful belt that could not be replaced, could not be reimagined, and I don't think I would ever get bored of. James says, have you ever been to a WWE show and did you like it? I've been to several. I've been to all of the NXT UK takeovers. That's where I interviewed William Regal, Triple H. I have pictures of both of them. A number of the other talents there. Gunter, for example, I've interviewed him a number of times. One-on-one and as part of a scrum, as it were. In addition to that, I've also been to Raw and SmackDown tapings, where I've interviewed Triple H again, Cesaro, and a number of others, for example, Nikki Cross, Cedric Alexander, and so on and so forth. There is a lot of very, very talented people that I've gotten to know through that. And it's funny that people see the pictures of me with these wrestlers and see the time that I take with them and to meet them and say, oh, this guy doesn't know any wrestlers. Lies. Terrell Dawson, thank you very kindly for subscribing on the YouTube side. I do appreciate it. There's also very good stuff here that I suggest you check out if you have the time for it, including plenty of news as regards the future for Liv Morgan and SummerSlam plans as well. We're also having another video coming on Wednesday about the plans for SummerSlam going forwards. Sean said they could always have Mandy come up as champion. They could. I don't necessarily think they will, though. Johnny says, with Seth getting the WWE title, I would assume Drew's taking the Universal title in Cardiff. I still can't rule it out. I don't think anyone can. KJ says, crazy that the men hadn't main evented Raw in a match in over 80 days. Last time they did was Randy's 20-year show, which was the 8-man tag. Yeah. It sounds absolutely crazy until you realise that most people haven't even noticed. We've just had good wrestling. Simon says, Tom, where do you think Neymar and Ronaldo are going? Away. D. Freeman says, WrestleMania 30 is my favourite pay-per-view of all time because of the story that was told throughout the night with Bryan, and it was other good matches. Before that, it was WrestleMania 26 with the greatest match of all time on there, Shawn versus Undertaker. I'm surprised you preferred the second match between Shawn and Undertaker. Most people seem to think that's the other way around. James says, Brock Lesnar and Roman Reigns bring out the best of each other. I think that's absolutely true. And I think that's a very fair comment. Simon says, whatever people think of OnlyFans, Tony Storm made $10,000 on her first day on the platform. Good for Tony, make your money. Yeah, I don't judge anyone for OnlyFans. I know 2 people who actually have OnlyFans. All credit to you. Go for it. If you want to make your money in that way, you make your money in that way. It's a very rough time to be alive right now. There's a cost of living crisis across the goddamn world. We got to live somehow. And if that works for you, you go right ahead. If I was hot enough, I'd probably do it myself. D. Freeman says, Tom, I still see you high on and keep pushing that toxic attraction group. Need you to wear their shirt on stream one day. You want to buy me the shirt? I will wear the shirt. I will happily wear the shirt. I'd look fantastic in it. You all know it. You all know it. James says, I would love to see The Fiend return. That seems very, very unlikely. Connor says, is there a chance we see Miz and Ciampa versus AJ and Logan? I have answered that one already. It is a possibility. KJ says, that breakdown of the Shield rock, paper, scissors was so confusing, but was very accurate. Yeah, people don't spot it. People don't spot it, but it's there. Sean says, does JD McDonough beat Bron Breakker in your opinion? No. I do think Bron Breakker is coming up at SummerSlam, but still, no. KJ says, I think AJ teams with Logan Paul, maybe as Miz versus Ciampa. Yeah, certainly a possibility. D. Freeman says, how long does Cara Noir stay in Progress? I'm not sure. I'll have to reach out to Progress and find out. Brian says, is Edge using his own old theme when he returns? No, he's spent a lot of money on this current new theme, so he'll probably still be using that. Razal says, what do you think about that Kermit person on Reddit? They've been really accurate on a lot of things, and they said Naomi was offered a new contract but turned it down. Also said Sasha was released. I don't know them, but I can say that Naomi was offered a new contract and has not signed a new deal as of yet. So, good stuff so far. Simon says Alexa Bliss got hate for allegedly pinching Bray's gimmick. Just came out of Alexa's interview with Fox that Bray gave her permission to use the gimmick and have fun with it. Yeah, that also came out here. I reported that a while back, that she and Bray were actually sitting down and working out their characters together. Because they were. Alexa Bliss and Bray Wyatt were writing together. I reported that about 2 years ago now, around the time of the Swamp fight. Yeah. Funny how people don't pay attention. James says Edge versus Balor should be left for WrestleMania. That is a long time to keep this story hot. I don't think they'll manage it. KJ says Becky's the biggest name on Raw at the minute with no full-time Brock or Roman, then no Cody or Randy. When the draft happened, Becky and Seth were both moved over to Raw to be the top stars there. However, Becky Lynch was the top star there and continues to be so. Reported at the time, it is still very much the case. Connor says apparently Spurs players are not used to hard training in the recorded train today. Kane threw up and Son collapsed in tiredness like what WTF is Conte getting them to do. Interesting. Moxie says who beats Roman for the Universal title? Your booking. My booking, Shinsuke Nakamura. Not going to happen, but that's what I want. Johnny Mendes says once Mandy loses her title I see Toxic Attraction coming to the main roster. I just don't know which show. I completely agree. I would hope SmackDown. I just would love to see Mandy versus Liv. Sean says Bruce Pritchard said at the Undertaker documentary he didn't like the streak ending at WrestleMania 30. He would rather have Undertaker retire undefeated at WrestleMania. The Undertaker would not want that. The Undertaker would absolutely not want that. If he was told that was what was going to happen, The Undertaker would have intentionally lost a match to someone. Probably Randy Orton. The Undertaker, essentially since the streak got to 10 around WrestleMania 22, was determined to lose, and everybody he wrestled, he wanted them to beat him. Connor says a lot of people are calling on Liv to get a new finisher because people have a hard time selling Oblivion. Only Rhea and Ember Moon have sold it as it's intended. It's not that hard. It's really not. You just fall forwards. Edge for a while was using a downward spiral. Same thing. Literally same thing. You just fall forwards. Can you not do a front bump? Yeah, sorry for reminding people about Swamp Fight. I do apologise. Simon says a lot of Seth fans are sick of his losing streak though. I think he deserves a lot better. Compared to Roman, gets not a lot. Should Seth have and win the WWE title? The reason people are so behind Seth and turning on Roman is because Seth's losing matches and Roman's winning them. That's all it is. Moxie says I think Roman is going to go rogue, beat the hell out of Brock, worse than what he did to Jay at Clash at the Castle, a Clash of Champions, but Brock beats Roman worse than what he did to John Cena at SummerSlam. So basically they just kill each other. That's what I'm looking for. KJ says they could do KO versus Edge at Mania. I feel that's one dream match left for Edge. Works for me. I mean, that makes sense. KO versus Edge. I could see it. James says, Cody Rhodes is my favourite wrestler. Would love to have seen him fight a prime HBK. Unfortunately, will not happen at this point. And Connor says, at least you did not remind them of Seth versus The Fiend in Hell in a Cell. Oh wait, I've just done it. Whoops. Brutal, Connor. Brutal. Brutal. We have hit the hour. I have to go and break change for a £10 note. Like, I can't describe the reasons for that. It's just something that I apparently have to do for the young'uns. So we'll see how that goes. So I will be seeing you guys on Wednesday for a new video about SummerSlam, and then Friday for our next spoiler warning. In the meantime, I've been Tom Colohue. I want to say a massive thank you to all of you for watching. You've been fantastic. I'll see you all very soon.